July 28, 1976, will forever be etched in the annals of medicine, when a sudden wave of severe pneumonia swept through the heart of a bustling American Legion convention in Philadelphia, leaving more than 100 men gasping for breath and the nation trembling with fear. The mysterious illness that struck these veterans was unlike anything doctors had seen before, and it would set in motion a frantic race for answers that would change epidemiology forever. It began innocently enough. Delegates from across the United States gathered at the Bellevue Stratford Hotel, a grand, marble-clad beacon of post-war optimism, to celebrate camaraderie and service. Within days, however, a handful of attendees complained of fever, chills, and a dry cough that rapidly progressed to a crushing shortness of breath. By the end of the first week, 30 men were hospitalized, 20 of them in intensive care, and 3 had already succumbed to the relentless assault on their lungs. The early clues were perplexing. Standard bacterial cultures returned empty, antibiotics that typically halted pneumonia faltered, and chest X-rays revealed dense, bilateral infiltrates that seemed to swallow entire lobes of the lungs. Physicians, accustomed to dealing with influenza and typical bacterial culprits, were suddenly confronting a pathogen that refused to be identified. In an era before rapid molecular diagnostics, the mystery deepened, and the pressure mounted as the media dubbed the phenomenon the Legionnaires' mystery. Enter Dr. William L. K. Ransom, a young epidemiologist at the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, CDC. Tasked with untangling the web of infection, Ransom and his team deployed a classic field investigation. They interviewed patients, mapped their movements, and collected samples from every conceivable source: water fountains, air conditioning ducts, even the hotel's decorative plants. Their painstaking work revealed a common denominator. Every ill participant had spent time in the hotel's newly installed air conditioning system, a sophisticated closed loop that recirculated indoor air without fresh ventilation. The breakthrough came not from a lab result but from a simple, almost cinematic moment. While examining the cooling towers that fed the hotel's air system, a CDC technician swabbed a thin film of grayish slime that clung to the tower's inner surfaces. The sample was sent to the laboratory, where, after days of incubation at 35 degrees Celsius, a faint, translucent colony began to emerge. Under the microscope, the organism displayed a distinctive rod-shaped morphology with a safety pin appearance, a hallmark later recognized as the gram-negative bacterium, now known as Legionella pneumophila. The identification of L. pneumophila was a watershed moment for epidemiology. It was the first time a disease had been traced to a water-borne pathogen thriving in man-made cooling systems. The CDC's rapid dissemination of this finding led public health officials across the country to inspect similar ventilation structures, averting further outbreaks and saving countless lives. Yet the story did not end with the discovery of the bacterium. It also ushered in a new era of legal and forensic scrutiny. As the death toll rose to 34, families of the victims filed lawsuits against the hotel, the manufacturer of the cooling towers, and even the CDC, alleging negligence and demanding accountability. In the courtroom, the prosecution leaned heavily on autopsy reports, which had become the silent witnesses to the tragedy. Pathologists performed meticulous examinations, revealing hemorrhagic necrosis within the alveoli, abundant inflammatory infiltrates, and most tellingly, the presence of intracellular bacteria lodged inside macrophages, tiny immune cells that had been turned into unwitting carriers. The autopsy findings provided the critical link between the clinical syndrome and the microscopic organism, bolstering the legal argument that the cooling tower's design and maintenance had directly facilitated the spread of the pathogen. The trial itself became a public spectacle, broadcast on nightly news segments that dramatized the courtroom drama as a battle between industrial progress and human health. Expert witnesses from microbiology, engineering, and public health testified, each painting a piece of the puzzle. The defense argued that the cooling tower was a state-of-the-art system, built according to all existing standards, and that the pathogen's emergence was an unforeseeable anomaly. The plaintiff's counsel, armed with the autopsy's vivid descriptions of lung devastation, contended that a simple oversight, failure to regularly disinfect the water reservoir, had created a breeding ground for Legionella, and that this negligence was tantamount to homicide. In the end, the jury reached a settlement that required the hotel to overhaul its ventilation infrastructure, implement routine hyperchlorination of water systems, and fund a nationwide educational campaign about Legionella prevention. More importantly, the case set a legal precedent. Manufacturers and facility managers could be held liable for diseases stemming from engineered environments, compelling the industry to adopt rigorous water management protocols. The aftermath of the 1976 outbreak rippled far beyond the courtroom. The CDC established the Legionella surveillance program, publishing guidelines that emphasized regular testing, temperature control, and biocide treatment for cooling towers, hot tubs, and decorative fountains. Laboratories across the nation adopted selective media, BSI-agar, to isolate Legionella, and researchers began to unravel the bacterium's unique biology, discovering its preference for warm, stagnant water and its ability to survive within protozoa. Clinically, the discovery transformed the management of atypical pneumonia. Physicians learned to prescribe macrolide antibiotics, such as azithromycin and fluoroquinolones, which proved effective against pneumophila, while also recognizing the importance of supportive ventilation strategies. Medical textbooks added Legionnaires' disease to the roster of community-acquired pneumonias, and the term entered the public lexicon, forever linking a wartime veterans organization with a microscopic menace. Subscribe to the Autopsy Files for more stories like this.